the amount of dives I've had without a camera in my hand compared to with them is 20-1. I dive with a camera every time I dive.
Off-Gassing, a scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. In this week's episode, I speak with Kyle Roepke, a cinematographer aiming to give a voice to the underwater world. Kyle speaks about learning to dive in the cold but beautiful waters of British Colombia, working with Sea Legacy, and eventually starting his own production company. I also get a chance to speak with Kyle about his path into the rebreather world, a journey to find purpose, a journey to capture moments, and of course, some amusing stories along the way. I hope you enjoy. Kyle, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Nick. How about yourself?
I am doing good. A little impromptu trip back to Ahmed. We were here a month ago. That's when I met you. And my girlfriend, she got her open water certification. So she's like, when are we going back to Ahmed? And luckily, she doesn't have to twist my arm very much to get me to go on a dive trip. So here I am.
No one has to get pushed that hard to be back here. It's a very good place to be.
Yeah. I just wanted to hear a little bit about your scuba story. So how did you get into diving? Tell me about your first breath underwater, what that experience was like.
So I got into scuba diving pretty unorthodox. My first breath underwater was actually a DSD in Malta in the blue hole. That was a total random experience that my older brother, he was scuba certified. There was this guy that was sitting next to the water, and he just told me, I'm going scuba diving. And he was certified through college. And I was like, okay. And he's like, he'll bring you if you want to go. I was like, fuck, all right. So I jumped in the water with him, went for what I thought was going to be a pretty chill DSD. He said, go down to 5 meters, hang out. If I did good, we go further. So fast forward about 15 minutes, he gives me the good old fashioned okay. And he says, follow me. And I went with him, and we actually went through the blue hole. We went down pretty deep. I don't really know how far, honestly. I didn't know any idea what was going on, but I had a great time.
Yeah.
And end the dive just super happy. And then I actually didn't, for no reason other than just not being near the ocean, I didn't go in the water for almost 3 years after that for scuba diving.
Okay.
But my first breath was quite an intense experience.
I would say so.
Yeah.
So what prompted you to get back, to wanting to go towards the open water and take a course? Because I know for me it was same thing. I did a Discover scuba dive backpacking through Thailand. Just this looks like something I would enjoy, and it was just instant love. Under the water, I'm like, I want more. What can I do? But yeah, it was about a year before I was able to do my open water course. So how was that? What brought you back to it?
So I'm a photographer and filmmaker. Okay. And prior to me being a scuba diver and post my open water experience in Malta, I was a photographer and videographer, and I was traveling around shooting different TV shows and brand product stuff. And I really enjoyed photography, but I was having a hard time with finding purpose around doing what I was doing. And I was kind of in this space where I knew that I had a potential if I wanted to keep pushing at it, but I didn't really have a reason to. So I was sort of actually thinking about pivoting my lifestyle completely into a different profession. And I got a crazy opportunity to work with an ocean conservation nonprofit called Sea Legacy, based out of Vancouver Island, British Columbia. And I had been sitting on my computer for hours in throughout my life watching this one guy, Paul Nicklin, film stuff and put his stuff online and seeing his stories and his footage. And I was always just so infatuated with it. And through a connection of my brother, I was sitting in my office and I got a phone call from a number from Canada, and I answered it, and it was Paul Nicklin. And he was like, shit. Is this Kyle Roepke? And I said, yeah, this is a job interview. I was like, oh my God. So I totally botched the interview, all this stuff, but he ended up giving me the chance to go up to Canada and work for his conservation nonprofit as an intern. And my job was to sit in front of the computer for 10 hours a day for 6 days a week and edit his footage. Because that's what they needed to have done, is people to process stuff.
Yeah.
What I didn't realize, but now it's very obvious, is I was just sitting watching some of the most amazing wildlife spectacles in the world, underwater and topside, just go right by my face. And seeing who's that amazing what they do, seeing their work in its raw form shows you how much, talent is there, how hard they have to work, and I was just watching this, and all I could think of was this is exactly I want to be the person underwater doing this.
Yeah.
This is what I
awesome.
want to do.
That's awesome.
So I worked with them for like 5 or 6 months before I had the opportunity to actually do my open water course, because I was at the time also dive tending for Paul. So he was diving, I was driving the tender, and he was going on solo dives in Canada. And I was picking him up and dropping him off. And I just kind of slid it by him. I said, Paul, it's not very safe that, I don't know what you're doing down there because I'm not a scuba diver. And he said, good point, Kyle. You're getting certified.
Oh, okay.
Great. So he just sent me off to the local dive shop. And my first, 30, 40 dives were in British Columbia in winter in a dry suit. And it was amazing. It really opened my eyes to a whole new ecosystem that I never knew existed.
Yeah.
And my next breaths were learning how to dive in cold water environments and fast current with also a camera. So I went right into it. Yeah. So it was all for photography and filmmaking.
Oh, that is awesome. Most of my early training was done freshwater lake inside of Texas. Just tell me a little bit about learning in the cold water, because there definitely has to be some challenges there, because we would teach all throughout the year, and definitely when those cold months hit, it's even more challenging. So I could just imagine the hurdles that you had to go through.
Yeah, I mean, I only did 2 dives in a wetsuit before I went into a dry suit.
Okay.
And the 2 dives in the wetsuit were cold and miserable, obviously.
Yeah. It was like a 12 mil, like Farmer John.
Yeah, 9 mil wetsuit with a 7 mil vest and booties and gloves.
30 pounds of weight.
Yeah, seriously, probably a little bit over that. And that I don't remember those dives as much, because I think that we were in a bit more of a contained water space. But I remember one of the first dry suit dives I did, or the first dry suit dive. I'm not sure if the conditions changed. They're kind of weekend to weekend apart, and I don't know the exact temperature of the water because it's been a while. But I remember I got in the water and I had this moment of panic because I thought, holy shit, my face is going to freeze. I thought that there was no way that I was going to be able to, it was physically painful to go in the water.
Yeah.
And, I got in the water, I filled my mask with water. I purged my mask. I'm like, okay, I got to reset here. And, after about 30 seconds, the pain just became numbness. And I was like, okay, all right, we're in. And then, just kind of went for it.
Yeah.
And, the air consumption was ridiculous. I think I breathed the Steel 120 in 46 minutes or something. Yeah, really, I just pounded through it. And that continued for a long time.
I'm sure. I mean, but you definitely... The motivation behind getting certified must have been just strong, to be able to go work with Paul. That must have been, I mean, essentially, you knew of him, and then you're like, here he is saying, okay, you need to get certified so you can come. I mean, I'm sure you would have just powered through a lot of uncomfortable moments.
Yeah, I was doing a lot. I also, part of the situation was that you work for their institution, their organization, you sign up to be an intern, and if you give them a lot, and therefore your spare time is very limited, and you're trying to progress as a diver, but you can't do more with them until you become a better diver, but you're not going to be able to dive with them until you're a better diver.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of times where, you looked at your weekdays and you looked at your evenings and nights, and you'd go out with a friend and you'd start your dive at 5:30 and you dive one dive till 6 and it's pitch black, and then you dive another dive from pitch black till 6:30, and then you're out of the water, and then you have to go home and rinse everything. So a lot of the diving was very much because you wanted to do it. It wasn't because it was fun.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about the diving in that area. The Pacific Northwest is definitely a destination that I've wanted to go to for a long time. I'm not the biggest cold water guy. I definitely, own a dry suit. I'll get in cold water. There's definitely a lot of cool things to see there, but I haven't been. So tell me a little bit about, what is there to see? Obviously cold, we could assume.
Yeah, cold you can assume. I think the cold water diving is some of, you go in warm water places and, things scratch you. There's things you might be a little bit nervous of, like poisonous fish, and, people are nervous of sharks. But there's something about being in the cold and in the kelp that you feel really at home in the water.
Okay.
You feel very contained. There's not this massive sense there's a pelagic monster lurking to eat you, or you're going to see there isn't this pelagic nature to it, but there's very much a sense of of containment and also unfathomable discovery, because what you expect to see is not what you see. The things I've seen in the sense of like being in a kelp forest, it feels like you're in the most beautiful cathedral in the world, where, you know, it's almost like a reef can wrap around you, like you're in a cocoon.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you come to these massive sloping steep walls with just, you know, different colored anemones and nudibranchs and, you know, just sponges that it looks like someone just like took a 20 cans of spray paint and just exploded them on a wall, and you would never realize it was there unless you were down there. You know, from the top, you just don't see it. And I think the diving is actually some of the most intriguing I've done, but it's definitely, you're paying a price to be there. You know, you have limited mobility in your body because of your dry suit. You're cold, very high currents, one of the strongest currents in the world there in Vancouver Island. Yeah, there's some of the dive sites we're diving every 6 hours get to 9 to 12 knots.
Wow.
Yeah, so you only dive slack. You have to be spot on with your dive planning, spot on with your execution, or else you're going to get caught in a downwelling and you're not going to do well.
Any scary moments that you've had to?
I've been very, very lucky, and because of training and also good practice, I never dive in British Columbia in those areas without a super seasoned diver with me that I trust, and they know the tide tables, the moon charts, and you know what's being told to you is not what's right. You have to take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
You can't trust a chart. And, you know, these people with, you know, 10,000 dives in this area, they're the ones I trust.
Yeah.
And it's never like you just show up and don't have a guide who knows what they're doing and jump in the water. I would never suggest it. Never would ever suggest it. But when you get to those places, like there's a spot called God's Pocket, which is especially incredible. And, you know, if you dive in the wrong time of day, it's not a question of if you're going to be okay. You're not going to be okay.
You're going to end up in the pocket.
You're going to end up in Davy Jones' pocket. Yeah. But, you know, if you dive it with the right people, the right place, the right time, it's. I heard from somebody that it was like Jacques Cousteau's second favorite place in the world to dive, which I have no idea if that's real or not. But I didn't doubt it when I saw it.
Yeah. No, that is awesome. So just kind of went through the courses to get to work and dive with Paul. Tell me a little bit about that. So like your first dives, being able to work with Paul and actually dive and get to film. How was that whole experience?
Yeah, so my first dives with Paul were not until I probably had about 30 or 40 dives under my belt. And we went on a filming mission to a little local sea lion rookery. And he dove all day long. And I bought this just like heinously beat up old dry suit. And I brought my own gear. And he knew I wanted to dive, but if you bring it up to a person like that you're pushing the dive and you're helping them, you're going to get X'd because, you know, they're the priority, of course.
Yeah.
You know, they're the person filming, you're their support, I'm his assistant. So you have to like put that all in your back pocket and just kind of like to show that you're ready, but you can't say that you're ready.
Yeah.
Or else you're too bold and then you're going to get told not today. And I was just waiting. But this entire day he did like 3 or 4 dives. And then he came up and he said, let's go for a dive. And I was like, okay. So I put on this dry suit that I paid far too much money for, that was way too small for me, crammed myself into it, jumped in the water, and...
It was a compressed neoprene or like a...
No, it was a sea tux.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was a 7 mil neoprene suit. The feet were massive, but the body didn't fit me. It leaked like a sieve. And I went for my dive with Paul. And it was really great. We went down, you know, he brought me deeper than he expected to. He was kind of testing me. We got back to the surface. We saw some shots. He gave me one of his cameras. So his job was trying to see if I could handle his off camera. So handing me 2 cameras at once, seeing what I would do with 2 cameras in my hands, because he's switching cameras. And so you have to like keep calm and, you know, be very methodical with where you're putting the domes. Don't scratch anything. Be very careful. Handle what's going on, understand what he's asking you in some sense. And he tested me. He handed me both cameras. He said he sort of panicked, all these things to see what I would do. And then we go back to the surface and, you know, everything was okay. He told me that like my trim was shit and that I was kicking when I was vertically, but there was hope.
Yeah.
I said, okay, cool.
Sometimes that's all you need is that little bit of hope. So, see me, like when I'm thinking of being handed 2 cameras, I'm just like, okay, how much money am I holding in my hands right now?
No, it's a great thing to think about. Yeah, it's not. It's like it's a lot of money, but I think when it goes that fast, you kind of slow down and you just think, what part of these cameras cannot touch?
Okay.
And the glass cannot touch.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah.
So you have one 25 kilo red helium 8K in one hand, then you have one Sony A1 in the other hand, and you just like kind of crucifix them away from each other, and you just hold there, and you just go keep these cameras apart, and you just kind of do it. You know,
Okay.
if you got caught in like what was at risk, I think that you would probably maybe it's not the right job for you.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. So, how many test dives did you have to do before you were invited to actually start filming underwater?
So actually with Paul, I did some filming underwater, but primarily what my job was with him was he would want to dive a stills camera and a film camera,
Okay.
or a video camera all the time, but he only has one set of hands.
Yeah.
So he would give me the other camera. I would jump in the water with him. I would do my best to keep up with him. He would tell me, if you lose me, don't try to find me, but keep up with me. And if I see you, you're doing your job wrong. So you kind of stick in his bubbles right over his tank valve, and you just don't try to get seen by him.
Yeah.
That's what you do. And, you dive with him. And I was never really shooting with him underwater because he's like, I would take some BTS shots. I would every so often run the red. There was actually one time where he gave me the red camera in Timor-Leste, and he said, I want you to shoot the red camera. And it was one of the first dives he let me dive in this amazing expedition trip. I should say he let me dive, because it was an amazing trip. That he brought me on one dive after like 4 days. And it's the most amazing, prolific reefs in the world, I think, as far as I've seen. And I've been pretty privileged.
Where is this?
Timor-Leste.
Okay.
It's insane. And we're in a boat access only place where, I bet I would be just amazed if there'd been more than 30 divers in the world who ever dove this place.
Okay.
And we did these dives, and he gives me a red camera, which I'm like, okay, here we go. And he takes his stills camera down, and I shot 950 gigabytes in 45 minutes. And he gets to the surface, and he'd been shooting for 5 days. So and we're like in like a media crunch. We're like, we don't have that much space in the hard drives. And he looks at me and he's like, you're like too trigger happy. He's like gotten to the point where he's like letting things go by. He's like, he wants his best of the best. And I just hosed it like a fire hose. And that was like one of the only times he actually told me to go film. And I was like, fuck. All right. Yeah. I didn't quite understand the assignment, but yeah. But that was great. A really amazing trip, amazing reef. But yeah, I actually only really started to film underwater as like a DP underwater when I bought my own camera system.
Okay.
I bought a red camera and underwater housing because I looked at what he had and I wanted the exact same thing. So I saved my ass off. And then I purchased it. And then we went on a dive trip together later to the Bahamas where I shot with him a little bit. And that was sort of at the point in time where I was departing Sea Legacy. And then that's where I started my independent DP career as an underwater cameraman and cinematographer.
Okay. Well, for the viewers out there that do not know what DP means, what exactly is that?
DP is director of photography.
Okay.
So a DP is basically someone who is told a vision by a director who says, this is what I want it to look like. This is what we need, and you should go get it. And it's a little bit of a difference. Like if you know someone who's a filmmaker, or the worst thing you'd actually call them is a videographer, because videographers do lifeless commercial TV things. Filmmakers are good because they're storytellers. But if you want to make someone that is a filmmaker or someone who works in video feel really good about themselves, call them a director of photography, because it's what most people are. And it's basically when you have creative control over what you're providing to the production.
Okay.
So that's what I call myself, as either a cinematographer or a director of photography.
Okay.
Because it's sort of like people are trusting you to bring a perspective that they know that you can gain that no one else quite can, because they don't have the same vision as you. So
Okay. So before moving forward a little bit, what were your biggest takeaways from Sea Legacy? Obviously, some certifications and being able to work with one of, if not the best. What other takeaways did you get from it?
I think my key takeaways were, you have your practical takeaways, but you also have the takeaways that are that kind of ingrained in your life on the reason why. And that's why I came to Sea Legacy in the first place is, giving a voice to the ocean and the issues at hand, and showing people the true nature of what's happening in the sea is, I think, the most important issue that we can be telling right now as storytellers. And the deep found appreciation for the sea and the creatures within it that I gained and that I carry forward into my day-to-day life, I think is my biggest takeaway for sure.
Awesome. No, that's huge. That's a good thing to hear. So moving forward, now you have your own production company. Is that how
I have a freelance production company.
Okay.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit of things that you're doing there.
Well, I do a lot of different things. I've done everything from filming deadliest catch in Alaska on deck of crab fishing boats. I've done single shooting for CBS News on hotel TV shows. I've done, all sorts of things. And so it's this kind of thing where you kind of send it off on your own, and you're a 26 and 27-year-old trying to make it work. You have the vision and you have the reality. And I kind of have a friend of mine that gave me the saying that when someone asks you if you can do a job, you say, does it pay? And if they say yes, you go, I'll do it. So I do a lot of things. But the vision in progression is to be doing primarily and solely underwater film work. But in the meantime, I've been doing a lot of different things for like shooting different TV shows, a lot of short films in the ocean for ocean conservation nonprofits. Okay. I think has actually been a majority of my work. So a production or a nonprofit that wants to have a story told around their work or their impact or their mission, they send me in as a single person to direct, produce, and film like a series of 3 to 5 minute films, 4 or 5, based around different issues and different people or different solutions that they're working on. And it involves flying drones, doing audio, interviews, B-roll, and diving.
Okay, so this is a one-man show?
One-man show.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, so. and then a team of editors that are really talented that put it all together, and a director that I work with very closely that kind of checks during, and then checks after to make sure things are good to go. And it takes a team.
Yeah.
But those are really fun projects because you're kind of like a Leatherman that goes in there and just kind of works on stuff, and then something comes out the other side.
Cool. So where are you based out of?
It's a great question. So I have a business in Oregon.
Okay. And you're from Oregon originally?
Yes. I grew up from the age of 10 to 18 in Oregon. So I think my most formative years absolutely Oregon.
Yes.
Not near the ocean, in the mountains.
What part?
Joseph, Oregon.
Okay. I'm not too sure.
No one really is. It's like one of the biggest counties in Oregon. There's only 7,000 people in it, and there's still not a stoplight.
In the whole county?
In the whole county.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I graduated in a class of 86.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was a 3-sport varsity athlete.
Okay.
Team captain on 2 of those teams for 2 years. Yeah.
Oregon is an absolutely beautiful place. I've spent some time, a little bit, just some time in Portland. I lived in Washington for a little bit, so obviously we would make it down to Oregon. Medford down south, and then Portland obviously is kind of the go-to. Oddly enough, when I first moved up there was my when I grew an appreciation for craft beer, because it was a huge. I think that's kind of the start of the craft beer industry, is in that part of the world.
If you like beer, go to Oregon.
Cool. So, where are you based out of? You said
now Montana.
Okay.
But as I say that, I haven't been in Montana for 3 months. I was there for only 3.5 weeks in the past 6 months.
So why Montana?
Because my truck is parked there.
Okay. So did it, I'm not going to say did it break down, but just kind of happened?
No, it didn't break down. My mom, she moved there, and I have sort of like 2 phases of my life. I have the stuff that I love and own, but I don't use often, and that stays in Oregon at my family house, which includes like my lake boat, which I can wake surf on.
Awesome.
I have like an RV that's from 1983. That's great. A motorcycle. That's not stuff that ever needs to go.
What kind of bike you got?
I got an 83 CB 750K cafe racer.
Okay.
Love
Cool.
It.
Cool.
It doesn't run, but it's
so a working project. Yeah.
I've been working on it for a couple of years. I love it though. I'll never sell it. Listen to that, Mom. But then I have a 6x12 enclosed trailer that has all the stuff that I actually really use in my life. Okay. And that goes behind my Toyota Tacoma. And right now my mom has been living in Bozeman, so I have it parked in her side yard. And if I were to move into an apartment, that's the stuff I'd use. And inside that trailer, you're going to find multiple dry suits, 4 steel 120s, a compressor, a generator, a computer system, a couple desks, a bed, my clothes, a couple odd firearms, and basically all the odds and ends, and a lot of skis. So that's what I need on a day-to-day basis to arrive somewhere and be okay. So that's why I say Montana.
Okay. I honestly, the only time I've ever been through Montana is I took a Greyhound bus from Washington down to Colorado, and we went through Montana. And so I don't have much experience, but I know it's beautiful country up there.
Yeah, Montana is really incredible. Yeah, love it there. No diving.
No freshwater diving.
But there is an airport.
Oh, okay.
Actually, no, this is actually this is a key takeaway for anyone that's listening that wants to be an international traveler, like in a filmmaker. If you're looking for a place to live, you don't need to be near what you want to do particularly unless you want to like be doing daily practice in diving or filmmaking. But if you can be within 30 minutes of an airport that connects you to an international airport easily, it's such a blessing because I check in at Bozeman Airport. They all know me by first name. It's a tiny airport. It takes 5 minutes to check in, and I don't touch my bags till I arrive in any destination in the world.
Okay.
And if you live in a place like LAX, the trouble of getting into that airport, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
you know?
just
anything.
Southern California in general.
Tiny airport, it's a great thing, you know, and it really expands where you can live because as long as I'm within 30 minutes at an airport, I might as well be 30 minutes from any airport in the world.
Okay. So how because obviously the last time I was here, you were here. We are in Ahmed. How often do you make it back to the States? I know you just took a trip back there. So is it periodically? Does it just kind of when it suits you? Like how often are you making it back there?
It sort of varies how often I'm back in the States. I haven't really planned much, but I've just kind of arrived and being away for a while. I had a series of projects that were all international that, you know, once you get carted away to an amazing place that, you know, they want you there for 3 weeks, 4 weeks for a project, it's pretty easy just to say, can I pay my change fees to stay later?
Yeah.
So I've been doing that for quite a while. And so I stayed later at each place I've gone, and that kind of led to me being gone for the majority of the last year.
Okay.
And then I actually ended up here in Ahmed kind of by chance, but to kind of seek a break from traveling so much in places that were so hard to travel, like Timor-Leste, where, you know, it's just like everything is expensive, it's amazing. Like everyone should go, but you know, you spend 2 months there and it's like, it's time that you need to like, something needs to be easy. So I looked at Bali, like, you know, Bali's easy.
Yeah.
Went to Bali, showed up here, and then within like 2 hours of being here, I was messaging Mark, the rebreather guru, and he's like, I have a spot on a rebreather course, and I've been looking to do it for ages. And I was like, I want to do it. So, you know, that little tiny decision actually led me into spending almost 3.5 months here.
Okay.
In the past four months. And I only went home one time because, you know, if a job is coming up and they can pay to fly each way, it doesn't really matter where I am in the world as long as I can make a flight and they okay the price. I don't need to tell them where I'm coming from. So It was in New York. I jumped on a flight from Singapore and went to New York. Then I was back here in a flash. And I'm still doing rebreather.
So besides the obvious reasons, because this is one of the conversations that we had when we first met, me looking into getting into a rebreather, still trying to figure out why, because I'm not too sure why. What were your reasons? I mean, obviously some of them are very apparent, but like, what were the biggest reasons for you wanting to move forward in rebreather training?
Me wanting to move forward with rebreather training really stemmed from what the rebreather allows you to do as a filmmaker. I had only ever experienced the world freediving and on scuba, but I was just being told by everyone that was in productions that I wanted to be a part of that were big blue chip documentaries and, you know, things that you see on Netflix. They only work with a rebreather, and I didn't really understand why, but they kept telling me that. So my evolution to rebreather was for work and viability. Once I started to dive the rebreather, once I got past the initial complete mind-bending screw-up of how I was rethinking the wheel, I already knew how to dive. Why was I rethinking this?
It's kind of a scary thought because it is.
I felt stupid because I was so uncomfortable. I was so out of place. I was scared by all the things I didn't understand. And I had been diving for years and been so happy and been finding success and getting great shots. And I was like, there was moments where I would just think to myself, why am I doing this? It's just and I just didn't get it. But then once you push past that and you actually know the rebreather, you're confident on the rebreather, you feel solid, and you go for a dive and you pay attention to the subtle differences. I won't even like the specifications of the safety, other things like that's not really like, I think there's different things, but I would see fish behavior start to change before I would hear the scuba diver. Then I would hear a scuba diver between 3 to 4 minutes before I'd see the scuba diver. And then you start to realize like, oh my gosh, like every time I'm down in the reef and I'm on scuba, these fish have known I'm here and they're acting differently. But when I'm on a rebreather and I stay put, and when I first arrive, of course, everything's a bit nervous to you because you're a big object coming in. But you get past that 30, 40 seconds and you stay still and you relax, the fish behavior is night and day difference. Things don't know you're there. Things fish come right to your mask and touch you. You're seeing little tiny fluttering mating behaviors of reef fish all around you. You're seeing stuff that like you've never really noticed before. And as a person that's looking to create cinema underwater, everyone can get great shots, but true moments are what you're looking for. You're looking to have moments that connect a viewer to a subject. So getting a shot of a clownfish swimming through an enemy is amazing. But catching the moment where a clownfish takes its fin and fans its eggs makes people see it all and suddenly fall in love because you're catching an intimate moment that, might take 10 hours of sitting there to see. And it won't happen if that clownfish is scared of you, or if it's seeing, like something like mate or even, garden eels, where I've tried to film garden eels for years on scuba, and I've left cameras recording in places and like you get a couple shots, but like I'm sitting on the bottom with my face 8 inches away from a whole bed of garden eels that just don't care I'm there.
Yeah.
And when I started to see that stuff, then I really started to understand, like, okay, the rebreather is doing a lot of work for me here, and it's far worth the trouble and effort to learn the new system.
Okay. What rebreather are you currently diving?
I got certified on the Choptima.
Okay.
But I am currently diving the Revo.
Okay.
Which I have purchased, and I'm very happy with.
Okay, awesome. So that's like I said, I'm a person just getting into this world and just trying to navigate the different types of rebreathers. So you said you got certified on the Choptima. You just bought a Revo. The Choptima is a front mount. The Revo is a back mount. Can you tell us a little bit about, the differences or what you liked about one as opposed to the other? So obviously you prefer the Revo if that's what you purchased. So just, a little bit about that side of it.
It's actually a little bit of almost extortion. So I purchased the Revo because the production companies I'd like to work with, they use the Revo as their standard.
Okay, and that's a very standard piece of equipment for a lot of... Okay.
It's sort of like the Massey Ferguson farm equipment of the diving world, of the rebreather world.
Yes.
It's tried and true. It's been around forever. And production companies with big insurance policies and things, they trust it, and that's the only one they have said they trust it officially.
Okay.
So it's sort of like... It's the Swiss Army knife of rebreathers.
Okay.
That's the one they want you to be on.
Yes.
Does not mean that other rebreathers aren't great. I got certified on the Choptima because when I came to my rebreather instructor, Mark, he only had a course open on Choptima. I wanted to be on the rebreather. I didn't understand much, but when he said he had an opening, I said yes. I fell in love with the Choptima for a lot of reasons. And if I could honestly tell you which rebreather I'd rather be on right now, a lot of me would say I'd rather be on the Choptima.
Okay.
I think that its adaptability throughout the levels of your diving is far greater than the Revo. The Revo, to do mod 1 and mod 2, apart from depth and exposure, you're dealing with how many stages you're carrying.
Okay.
And with the way that Choptima works, when you get to mod 1, you already have your diluent on your back and your scuba system. But when you get to mod 2, you're adding a second stage. And if you really, you can truly you can adapt the Choptima far different and easier throughout your progression in scuba diving.
Okay. Rather
than the Revo. Because with the Revo, you have your diluent and your O2 on board all the time. And then you have your stages off board. But the Choptima, you only have your O2 on board, and then you have two off-board gases that you can plumb in depending how you like. I really like it.
Okay.
I think it's great. I think the Revo has its advantages in some ways. Like, I love 5 sensors. I think when you're dealing with the weakest point of the rebreather, you should have as many as you can.
Yeah.
Some people say that's a huge cost and disadvantage, but if you look at the economics behind it, the way you swap them out, it's not much of a difference. I think it kind of depends on what's right for you and what you're up to. I think that if you want to be a filmmaker, you want to work with big production companies, the Revo has sort of the advantage because it's what they use. But if you want to be a rebreather diver and you want to have a safe and effective unit to dive on, the Choptima for sure, because you can show up with your normal back mount scuba cylinders. You can attach it to your system and you can dive it. And if there's any issues, or if you want to not dive a rebreather, you only have to get rid of the front mount, and then you still have your back mount and you can continue your dive trip, whatever. But if you have a Revo, if you want to have a backup scuba system in case the Revo fails, you have to carry a full other set of equipment.
Yeah.
And the Revo doesn't fail very often, but still, like, it's like you can use the same stuff for the same application in the Choptima, which I think there's a lot of benefits with.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed it. I think the worker breathing was great. I love the interface. It's all shear water controllers. I felt safe on it the entire time. I like that the O2 cylinder's in front of you. It's nice. It's easy to feel and find. If you have a boom on the Revo, you're reaching behind you, which you can't see your tank valves, and you have 2 at once. If you're on the Choptima, if you have a boom on your diluent, you do have a problem that you have to solve very fast because you're kind of screwed. But at the same time, like, if you have a boom on the scariest part, which is your O2, you have the tank valve right there and you can see it. It's pretty simple to turn it off.
Okay. Couple, well, more than a couple last questions. First question, where do you see your scuba diving going? Like, in this direction? Obviously, you're in the rebreather mode. Obviously, I'm assuming continuing down that path. Where do you see that? And I'm sure it can kind of go into the next question of, where do you see your business going? So I'm sure they're obviously merging. What direction? I hate this question absolutely. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? But like, where do you see it going? What is your plan? What is your goals? To like, are you trying to get to the 200-meter shipwreck, or are you trying to just capture those intimate moments in the water? Because being someone that was like, oh, okay, I'll just try this Discover Scuba Dive, and kind of fell into it. Where do you see it kind of ending up?
It's a great question. So a place to start this is that the amount of dives I've had without a camera in my hand compared to with them is 20-1. I dive with a camera every time I dive. And that's because diving is a tool for me to use to bring imagery underwater and to bring a story back. So my diving my progression is based around that. It's not about me achieving a personal goal. It's about me wanting to better equip myself to better tell stories.
Okay.
So whether it be rebreather or scuba or free diving, whatever it be, it's all based upon bringing back more powerful and meaningful stories. Where I would like to see myself in, 3 to 5 years is I'd like to see myself working with teams of specialized underwater cinematographers that are telling these stories that you see on Netflix.
Yeah.
Things like Our Planet, Blue Planet, Life Underwater, things like that, where that they're spending 6 to 8 months on a single series of shots because it takes that much commitment to do them. That's where I'd like to be. It takes a long time to get there, but at the same time, I'd like to also shoot for myself, because I find a lot of pleasure in I'm an artist. That's what I am, honestly. Past the diver, I'm an artist. And shooting underwater is my favorite medium. I really love it. And so anything that I can do to kind of push that agenda and to spend more time underwater, but also to become better at that is really where I'm focusing.
Okay. So 2 more questions. Hypothetical. I'm a budding photographer, underwater photographer. I would like to get into this world. What advice? And you've offered some advice, obviously, in this interview, what's the best piece of advice that you could give to somebody that is just kind of looking to get into the direction that you're in? Obviously, I'm sure there's some hard moments. There's some, like you said, sitting in front of a computer for 6 hours, 7 hours, just editing film. What's the best advice that you could give?
It's kind of a 2-part advice.
Okay.
First thing is you need to go create a relationship with the ocean. You need to spend time, whether it's on scuba or snorkeling or walking, whatever it be. If you want to be an ocean photographer, you can't be a spectator as much as you are. We always will be a spectator. I have to rephrase that. You'll always be spectating the ocean. You'll never be truly a part of it because we don't live underwater.
Yeah.
But you need to go and you need to create a relationship with your subject. So whether it be a swim or a snorkel or a walk, do it religiously and watch the changes and watch how things differentiate and shoot them and document them. And you'll notice that you'll shoot the same thing 10 times and each time will be different, and you'll realize you like some results better than others because the environment changes so much.
Okay.
So go create a relationship with the ocean. That's the first part. The second part, once you have that relationship and you have some skills, without being overtly ridiculous, you need to chase down people that you want to emulate, and you need to reach out to them and seek opportunity, because the thing is no one's going to say, I'm looking for a budding photographer to come be my intern.
Yeah.
No one's going to do it. You have to seek that, or someone has to very randomly give it to you.
Yeah.
So you need to put yourself in the situations that you can actually find the success you want. So whether it be trade shows, film festivals, online screenings, Instagram DMs, whatever it is, you need to put yourself forward. And 99% of those are not going to give a result back, and that's okay. But you need to keep pushing yourself into the space that you're actually searching for what you want, because it's not just going to arrive magically in your lap.
Got to get out there and get what you want.
Yeah.
So, last question. So, how can I find your work? How can I reach out to you? And just give me a little bit of that side of it. Your IG, your website. How can I see what you're doing?
Sweet. Well, if you would like to follow what I'm doing, I have mainly one output, which is Instagram, which is my personal stuff, which is my name, Kyle, Kyle Roepke, Kyle Roepke, and that's it's a very small example of what I'm up to. It's just kind of what I find in my spare time over the course of what I've been doing. But you can follow me along there. You can see where I'm at in the world, more or less. You can see some cool shots, whatever. I have a website too. It's the same thing, kyleroepke.com, where I have again, I kind of laugh now. It's only a bit of my portfolio because sometimes work kind of catches up and you don't really put things out there. But yeah, if you'd like to reach out to me and ask any questions or, anything at all, feel free to message me there or email me via the web link on my website. I'm going to do actually a little bit of work on the website because I need to update my portfolio page to see some of these short films that have recently come out in the past year. I don't really spend too much time on it. But apart from that, if you also want to watch season 17 of Deadliest Catch, you can also see some stuff there.
Okay, and then actually just thought of one last question. Any exciting upcoming projects?
Oof. Well, unfortunately, for podcasts that are a little bit under NDA disclosure, so I can't say too much. But let's just say that my summer and fall is going to be spent in the South Pacific.
Okay, awesome. Well, when it finally does arrive, we very much look forward to it, and we will definitely look for the link on the website or our Instagram page, and I will share your information as well.
Awesome.
So, Kyle, thank you very, very much for coming on to the podcast today. I really appreciate it. It's awesome to hear your journey, and I really, I'm sure that a lot of budding young photographers or even seasoned professionals will take a lot out of this.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Nick. Yeah, great to be here, and excited to hear how this thing comes out.
Offgassing, a scuba podcast.